Help support Name Explained by leaving a like and a comment, sharing this video, and by subscribing to the channel. Many of the states in the USA have somewhat similar names in one way or another. Take all the states with "new" in their name, or states with cardinal directions in their names, and I'm pretty sure that Ohio and Idaho are anagrams of one another. I mean, I haven't checked it or anything, but it sounds true. Though the two states with the most similar names are the two states that are almost right next to each other, if it weren't for Oklahoma ruining things. When you look at the names of these states, they're pretty much identical to one another, minus one of them having an extra AR at the start of it. While when reading them they may look the same, they are actually pronounced fairly differently. The more northern of the two is called Kansas, pronounced like a tin can followed by zus, while the southern one is called Arkansas, pronounced like R as in something belonging to someone, can like a tin can once again, and then saw like the thing you use to cut wood. The difference in pronunciation is most common at the end of the names, the z versus saw. This difference in pronunciation has baffled many on the internet for years, with countless articles and other videos discussing the subject matter. I always enjoy being fashionably late to these kinds of topics, so I'm finally throwing my hat into the ring and making my own video on this often discussed subject. If you don't enjoy this video, go watch literally any other video on the topic. Like I said, there are many out there. Anyway, like many state names of the USA, these two names derive from Native American roots. Though despite sounding so similar, these two states are named after two different native tribes. Well, kind of. The two tribes which these two states are named after both originate from a larger tribe, which were called the Dajiha Sioux. In the past, this large tribe split into smaller tribes and migrated all across what we now call the USA. These smaller tribes eventually formed their own customs and different versions of their initial language. Two of the tribes that came into being from the splitting of the larger Dajiha Sioux tribe were the Kansa people, also known as the Q people, and the Quapaw people. It was these two tribes that lent their names to the states of Kansas and Arkansas respectively. But where did their names come from? They both have somewhat similar meanings, with both relating to the fact they moved south. Kansas is believed to mean south wind people, while Quapaw is thought to mean people who live downstream. Both these names stem from the same older root word, meaning south wind. Of course, when various European powers started to claim land around the USA, many of them just kept on using the names that various native tribes are already using for the land, often simply using a tribe's name for the name of a state. With this in mind, it is pretty easy to see how the Kansa people lent their name to the state of Kansas. But why that extra S? Well, I'm sure you may know that in many languages we form plurals by adding an S to the end of a word. This is the case for the name of the Kansa people becoming the state name of Kansas. The first Europeans to reach this land were the Spanish in 1541. Spanish is in fact a language that adds an S to the end of a word to make it plural, specifically when a noun ends in a vowel, which Kansa does do indeed. Why they wanted to pluralize it, however, I'm not too sure. Maybe to refer to the many Kansa people living there. It's worth noting that the state isn't actually named directly after the people, however. The state is named after the Kansas River, which is then named after the people. Also, this river is something of a natural border between the states of Kansas and Missouri. So when a city on the Missouri side of the river was formed, it was named after this river, being dubbed Kansas City. It's a little strange that a city called Kansas City is in the state of Missouri, but it's because it's named after the river and not its neighboring state. Though Kansas City does spread into the state of Kansas too. Huge tangent, but it's something people wonder about. So it's pretty easy to understand how the tribe name of Kansa became the state name of Kansas. But how on earth did the tribe name of Quapaw become the state name of Arkansas? Well, while the name for this tribe is Quapaw in their own tongue, they actually ended up with different names in different languages. One of the alternative names this tribe received in a different language was the name of Arkansas. This was the name for the Quapaw used by the Algonquian people. Now it's worth noting that the Algonquians are not one Native American tribe, nor is Algonquian one single language. It is instead a term for a large collection of tribes and languages that all come from the same root. They are also one of the most widespread groups too, ranging from the northeast of the modern USA into the Midwest and over into modern-day Canada too. To make things a bit less confusing, however, I'm just going to be referring to them as the Algonquian people collectively, and their various languages as just the Algonquian language. But why on earth did the Algonquians refer to the Quapaw as the Akansa? Well, it has a lot to do with the Algonquian language itself and their history. In the Algonquian language, it is common for the letter A to be used as a prefix when referring to an ethnic group. You can even see it being used in their own name. And the reason they used Kansa was because the Quapaw people related to the Kansa tribe. As mentioned, both Kansa and Quapaw come from the same old root word meaning south wind. I imagine that the Algonquians would have stuck with using this Kansa name for the Quapaw people because they had been interacting with them for so long, even before they all separated into different tribes. So they just stuck with using that name to refer to all the tribes that came from the Degi Sioux tribe, though that's just my own theory. Whatever the case, it was the Algonquians who bestowed them with the name of Akansa, and it was this name that got picked up on by various European powers. This makes sense too. Most Europeans came to the Americas via the Northeast, and as there was such a large Algonquian population in the Northeast, it would be likely that most of their information on other native tribes would come to them via the Algonquians. Different European powers adapted this name of Akansa into different words, including Ankansia, Akansi, and Akansa, though the one that had the most sticking power was the French adaptation of the name Akansa, that being Arkansas. It was this French adaptation of the Algonquian name for the Quapaw tribe that evolved into the modern name of Arkansas we still have for the state to this day. French is a very unique language to say the least. While it is common to create plurals in French by adding an S, what isn't as common is actually pronouncing the S. French is full to the brim with silent letters, something that's even seen in English words of French origin to this day. So even though we might add an S to the end of a word to make it a plural in French, we don't actually say the S out loud. Even when a word is not plural but ends with an S in French, it is still silent. A prime example is with their capital of Paris, pronounced Paris in French. So because Arkansas is a word of French origin, it maintained that French pronunciation, with the S at the end remaining silent, despite the fact it's spelled in the same way as Kansas. Arkansas stayed under French rule for quite some time. It became part of the USA in 1803 via the Louisiana Purchase. This was when the United States purchased the Louisiana Territory from France for the grand total of $15 million, which apparently in today's money would be around $400 million, which is actually quite a steal considering how much other people have paid for other things in recent times. Though, despite Arkansas now belonging to the USA, an English-speaking nation, they maintained the French pronunciation of the land's name. I imagine this was simply because the pronunciation had become so established by this point that they felt a name change wasn't necessary. What I find most confusing, however, is that the state of Kansas was also part of the Louisiana Purchase. So if Kansas was French too, why wasn't it being pronounced in a French style as well? While I couldn't figure that one out, I imagine it had to do with the fact that Kansas wasn't initially French. As mentioned, its European history starts with the Spanish. This would have led to the French pronunciation not being able to take true hold in the land. Though that's just my own theory on the matter, I have to stress. If anyone with a better working knowledge of the history of Kansas can fill in the gaps, that would be great. While the French Arkansas pronunciation had been established, not everyone was actually too thrilled about it would seem. In 1881, the two senators of the state had a disagreement on how the name should be pronounced. One was happy with the French pronunciation, while the other wanted to pronounce it in a more English way, so it would sound somewhat similar to the nearby state of Kansas and be pronounced along the lines of Arkansas. This debate actually led to the state legislators intervening, and they made it law that the state's name should be pronounced in the way it is today, Arkansas. So in summary, the two states are named after two different tribes that both come from the same origin, the Kansa and the Quapaw. The name of the Kansa people was quite simply made into the river name and then the state name, while the Algonquian name of the Quapaw people, Arkansas, was adapted by the French and made into the state name. And then, when this land was taken over by English speakers, they just stuck with the pronunciations that had been in use for years. All of this resulted in these two states, with very similar names on paper, being pronounced very differently when said out loud. And if you are by any chance wondering how all the other states got their names, well, I'm saving that for a huge video for when we finally hit $1,000 a month over on my Patreon. When we hit that target, I plan on making a huge video explaining how every state in the USA got its name, as well as its official nickname. So go check out the Patreon if you want to see that video and a bunch of other extras. It takes just $1 a month to help out in a huge way. That's far less than the states paid for Kansas and Arkansas, that's for sure. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.